I'm convinced that our efforts at selective declassification to preempt those kind of false flag efforts and the creation of false narratives have been so important. In this case, I think we have had a great deal of effect in disrupting their tactics and their calculations and demonstrating to the entire world that this is a premeditated and unprovoked aggression built on a body of lies and false narratives. So this is one information war that I think Putin is losing.
That was CIA Director William Burns at a congressional hearing on Thursday defending the White House's decision to preemptively release intelligence about what Russia is planning. Former Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe joins me now to assess this strategy. John, good morning to you. You heard the former CIA director there. Your assessment of what he's calling an information war that Putin is losing.
Well, I think the intelligence community did exactly what it's supposed to, and he's right in terms of putting out very clear and obvious intelligence about what the Russians plan to do. The problem, Maria, is once again, the Biden administration didn't listen to that intelligence. Remember in Afghanistan, the intelligence was clear about what would happen with the Taliban without a conditions-based withdrawal, and Joe Biden ignored that, and it led to a terrible, embarrassing defeat. Same thing here. The intelligence was clear. Bill Burns is right. We all knew what Vladimir Putin was going to do. For months and months, we knew the intelligence was clear about his plans to invade Ukraine. The problem is, the Biden administration engaged in a strategy that defied that intelligence. It was an if-then strategy. Remember, we heard that, 1,000 times if we heard it once. If Russia invades, then we'll impose sanctions. If Russia invades, then we'll get the Ukrainians what they need. And so the failure to listen to the intelligence has really put the Ukrainians in an untenable position. Look, we can all marvel at how well that they're doing and how they're outperforming their Russian counterparts on the battlefield, but the Russians are still advancing because they're larger and stronger and there are more of them. And as a result of the Biden administration's failure to listen to the intelligence, the Ukrainians don't have what they need. They still don't. They didn't get it at the beginning, and they're still not getting it. And I'm afraid we've put them in an untenable position because we haven't listened to the intelligence.
So, John, Lindsey Graham just was with me saying that the Biden administration views Vladimir Putin as a partner in the Iran deal. You made the point to me that you could look at what they are releasing, and maybe it's good what they are releasing, but there's a whole host of things they're not releasing. Tell me about that. Right. So, you're getting all kinds of intelligence on what Russia's doing in Ukraine. You're getting no intelligence. The American people really don't know what's happening with this Iranian nuclear deal. I mean, for all the tough talk about what's going to happen with Russia, the lead negotiator in the U.S.-Iranian nuclear deal is Russia. Specifically, Mikhail Yulanov is the Russian negotiator who's dealing with the Iranians directly. And when we talk about intelligence, what our intelligence tells us, and Israeli intelligence and German intelligence, is that the Iranians cheated on the original JCPOA nuclear deal. It's why the Trump administration withdrew. They were spinning centrifuges, enriching uranium at unpermitted levels. They were storing heavy water needed for nuclear weapons, not permitted under the JCPOA. They were importing technologies. They were hiding testing facilities from IAEA investigators. They lie. They cheat. They're not trustworthy. And yet the Biden administration is so intent on getting a deal that we're using Russian negotiators to come together with any deal with the Iranians on this that really comes down to, Maria, not wanting to admit that they were wrong. The Biden administration doesn't want to admit that its policies on energy security and independence were wrong. They want Iranian oil in the marketplace, 1 million barrels a day to bring down prices, and they're willing to cut a deal with a terrorist regime and use another Russian bad actors to negotiate a terrible deal rather than admit that they're wrong and that they should reverse the Trump administration policies on energy independence and security. It is so duplicitous and hypocritical, and it's just astonishing to me that the lengths that they will go for a political win or a political victory and not admit that what they've done is wrong and is jeopardizing national security. It's just shameful.
Tell me about the new terms that they are talking about. Last week, we thought that we were getting a pause in the talks with the Iran deal because Russia was making new demands.
Well, so the clause that is now being considered, unbelievably, is a carve-out that allows Russia and Iran to engage in any kind of transaction that they want, which means in the international marketplace, which really means that all of these sanctions against Russia for their war crimes in Ukraine, Iran can money launder, essentially be the money launderer for any Russian activity under this deal. Of course, it's a huge win for Iran because they'll get rich from the oil that is on the international marketplace once sanctions are lifted, but they'll also get billions of dollars. They'll have their terrorist, international or their Revolutionary Guard Corps delisted as terrorists. I mean, it's just an insult to American security, and the fact that the mainstream media is not covering this is just outrageous.
There's another issue I wanted to talk to you about because I know you have been unable to discuss it in the past, but can you tell us more about the Iranian government's plans to pretty much kill Mike Pompeo? What can you tell us?
Well, I think that what's out there in terms of public reporting is, again, the Biden administration is cutting a deal desperately, any deal, not just negotiating with terrorists, but giving them a blank check. This is an administration that, as you talked about, Maria, while we're negotiating with them, last night fired a dozen ballistic missiles at the U.S. consulate in Erbil, Iraq. They do have ongoing assassination plans for former Trump administration officials. These are the people that the Biden administration would rather deal with than admit they were wrong and again, allow American energy production to begin. They'd rather cut a deal with Iran. They'd rather cut a deal with Venezuela. They'd rather cut a deal with terrorists and dictators than suffer the political consequences of admitting that their policies have put the United States in such a terrible position, and that the $8 a gallon gas prices in some places in the United States are a direct result of those Biden administration policies to reverse Trump administration energy independence.
It's just extraordinary that it's always optics here. And what we've been able to find out is that the State Department says it's paying more than $2 million a month to provide 24-hour security to former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Brian Hook, both of whom face, quote, serious and credible threats from Iran. John Ratcliffe, real quick on this assessment of the intelligence. We have a new intel assessment released last week, which we were watching the hearings. Any takeaways from that intel assessment that you want to share? I know that you had mentioned the cyber threat as well.
Right. We've talked about the cyber threat from, potential attacks from Russia. But the intelligence community assessment, which is an accurate one, is that our greatest cyber adversary in terms of cyber espionage and cyber attacks is China right now. So China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, what we call the Big Four with regard to cyber security issues. And generally speaking, the intelligence community assessment does acknowledge a shift and for the first time talks about China being, our greatest national security threat from a nation state standpoint, which is something that, many of us in the Trump administration had been saying and were criticized at the time.
That's right.
So, I think that there's an honest shift with regard to the intelligence community and the recognition of the existential threat that China and China alone poses to the United States long term.
Okay. John, thanks very much for weighing in on all of
You
this.
bet.
We appreciate your time. Former DNI John Ratcliffe, thank you, sir.
Maureen.